Chapter 1. Ordinary Thursdays. The morning began like all the others, with the scent of burnt toast and the clatter of a mismatched breakfast. Sam Roberts stood in front of the stove, waving a dish towel in front of the smoke detector that had already begun its usual protest. "It's fine," he muttered to no one in particular. "It's just toast, not a five-alarm fire." From the hallway came the sound of tiny footsteps, the hurried, uneven patter of an 8-year-old who just remembered she was running late. "Dad, where's my shoe?" "Which one?" "The left one." "Check the couch cushions," he called. "I already did." Sam opened the refrigerator, found the lunchbox he'd packed last night, and set it on the counter. "Check under the couch." Then a pause. Then a triumphant, "Found it." He smiled. Every morning was the same chaos, and somehow it always worked out. Beth came racing into the kitchen, hair tangled, backpack half-zipped, the missing shoe in her hand. She was small for her age, with eyes too big for her face, Emily's eyes. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, Sam's breath caught at the resemblance. He crouched down and helped her tie the laces. "You're getting faster at this." "I'm practicing," she said proudly. "Mrs. Gomez says practice makes progress." He kissed her forehead. "Mrs. Gomez is a wise woman." Beth studied him for a moment, her head tilted. "You didn't eat breakfast again." Sam forced a grin. "Sure I did. You just had coffee." "Coffee's made from beans. Beans are food." Beth rolled her eyes with the exaggerated drama of an 8-year-old. "That doesn't count." He laughed. "Tell you what, I'll eat after I drop you off." "Deal. Deal." They walked out to the car, the chill of early autumn brushing against their cheeks. The trees that lined their street had started to turn gold and red, the leaves scattering like confetti along the sidewalks. Sam's old sedan coughed to life on the third try, a sound he pretended not to notice anymore. He drove with one hand on the wheel and one eye on the rearview mirror, watching Beth hum along with the radio. The song was one of those bright, poppy tunes that stayed stuck in your head for days. "Are you nervous about the spelling test?" he asked. She shrugged. "A little, but I studied." "Then you'll do fine." "You always do." "Yeah, but what if I mess up because I always forget the U?" "That's okay," he said softly. "Messing up just means you're trying." Beth smiled, content with that answer. By the time they reached the school, the parking lot was buzzing with parents and kids. Sam pulled into his usual spot near the corner and glanced at the clock. They were early, for once. He unbuckled, turned to Beth, and said, "Remember, I'll be right here when the bell rings." She nodded, already halfway out of her seat. "Bye, Dad." "Hey, hang on." He reached out, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "You've got this, okay?" "I know." Then she was gone, darting toward the school gates with that fearless energy only kids seem to have. Sam watched her join the stream of children, her backpack bouncing with each step, and for a moment, the world felt simple. He leaned back in his seat, took a slow sip of his now lukewarm coffee, and exhaled. Ordinary, predictable, safe. At least, that's what he thought. Because when he looked up again, he saw a man standing across the street. Dark sunglasses, hands in pockets. Still, too still. Sam frowned, at first thinking the guy was another parent, maybe just waiting, like he was. But something about him felt off. The way his head didn't move. The way he seemed to be watching not just the school, but him. A pulse of unease crept through his chest. He tried to shrug it off. Big city. People had strange habits. Maybe the guy was waiting for someone. Maybe he was just. The man turned his head slightly. Even from a distance, Sam could feel the focus of that gaze. His stomach tightened. Before he could second-guess himself, he climbed out of the car and scanned the crowd for Officer Daniels, the school's resource officer. He spotted him near the entrance, chatting with a teacher. "Hey, officer," Sam called, trying to sound casual. Daniels looked up. "Morning, Sam. Everything all right?" "Yeah, I just..." He hesitated, glancing across the street. "See that guy? The one in the sunglasses?" Daniels followed his gaze. "Yeah. He's been standing there since I got here. Hasn't moved. Not sure why, but it feels wrong." The officer nodded once, expression neutral but alert. "I'll check it out. Thanks for letting me know." Sam stepped back, heart thudding faster than he wanted to admit. He watched as Daniels crossed the street, approaching the man. And then, just as the officer got close, the man turned and walked away. Not hurried, not panicked, just gone. Daniels looked back and shrugged, motioning that he'd circle the block. Sam stood there, unsure whether to feel relieved or more afraid. When the final bell rang that afternoon, he was still in the same spot, engine idling, eyes scanning the street. Beth came running out, waving a paper. "Dad, I got 100 on my test." He smiled, forcing the tension from his shoulders. "That's amazing, sweetheart." She beamed. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" He hesitated, looked once more across the street. Empty now, ordinary again. Then he smiled for real this time. "Yeah, ice cream sounds perfect." As they drove away, neither of them noticed the black car parked a block down, engine running, windows tinted. Inside, the man in sunglasses made a note on his phone. Then he started the car and followed. Chapter 2. The weight of silence. The next morning, Sam woke before dawn, not because he wanted to, but because his mind wouldn't stop moving. He sat at the kitchen table, staring into a mug of black coffee that had long gone cold. Outside, the world was still dark, the only sound the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock, steady, relentless, like the thoughts pounding in his head. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that man in sunglasses, standing perfectly still across from the school, his face unreadable. He'd told himself it was nothing. People stand around all the time. But something in his gut refused to let it go. He'd seen that kind of stillness before. Years ago, in the weeks after Emily vanished. Men in suits who came to ask questions but gave no answers. Neighbors who stared too long, whispering about the woman who'd left and the husband she'd left behind. Beth's door creaked open. Dad. He looked up, startled out of his thoughts. She was standing there in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, a tangle of hair falling across her face. Hey, sleepyhead. He forced a smile. You're up early. I had a bad dream. He pushed the chair back and opened his arms. She climbed into his lap, small and warm, still smelling faintly of soap and bubblegum toothpaste. Want to tell me about it? She shook her head against his chest. I just wanted to make sure you were here. The words hit him like a weight. Small, simple, but so full of trust it nearly broke him. Always, he said softly. I'm always here. She nodded, already starting to drift back to sleep against him. He sat there, holding her, feeling the rise and fall of her breathing. For the first time that morning, the house didn't feel so empty. By the time the sun climbed over the rooftops, Sam had convinced himself he was overreacting. He dropped Beth off at school, scanned the street. No man, no sunglasses, no sign of anything unusual. Still, when he drove to work, he couldn't stop checking the mirrors. Every few blocks, he thought he saw the same black car a few lengths behind, but each time it turned off before he could be sure. He laughed at himself under his breath. You're losing it, Roberts. The day passed in the dull rhythm of routine. Deliveries to make, bills to pay, 1,000 small responsibilities that kept him too busy to think too much. But whenever the phone rang, a small part of him still braced for bad news. When he got home that evening, Beth was already at the kitchen table, crayons scattered around her homework. Hey, superstar, he said, setting down the mail. What are we drawing tonight? A house, she said. Ours. But I added a garden and a dog. He smiled. A dog, huh? Planning ahead. Maybe, she said, eyes bright. If you give me a dog, I'll take care of it all by myself. Uh-huh. That's what every kid says. I mean at this time. He laughed. We'll see. The air smelled faintly of spaghetti sauce, his attempt at dinner bubbling away on the stove. For a moment, everything felt easy again. Until Beth spoke again, quieter this time. Dad, yeah. There was a man at school today. Mrs. Gomez said he was just waiting for someone, but he kept looking at the playground. Sam's chest tightened. What did he look like? Beth shrugged. He had dark glasses, like the kind movie spies wear. He froze. His voice came out carefully steady. Did you talk to him? No. He just stood there. But Mrs. Gomez told us to stay by the fence until he left. He nodded slowly. You did the right thing, sweetheart. She went back to coloring, humming under her breath, the worry already forgotten, but Sam couldn't breathe past the pressure in his chest. He turned off the stove, grabbed his phone, and walked into the other room. He called the school. No answer. Called again. Voicemail. He hung up and pressed his fingers to his temples. The world suddenly felt too small, too fragile. 6 years of holding everything together, of keeping Beth's world safe and predictable, and now it all felt like it was cracking at the edges. He sat on the couch, staring at the silent phone. For a long time, the only sound was the slow tick of the clock. That night, after Beth had gone to bed, Sam double-checked the locks. Once, twice, 3 times. He drew the curtains tight, turned off the porch light, then stood in the dark living room, watching the faint reflection of his own face in the glass. He told himself he was being cautious. That's all. A responsible parent. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was scared. Not of the man. Not even of losing control. He was scared of failing her. The one thing he'd sworn he would never do. He walked to Beth's room and pushed the door open quietly. She was asleep, her arm draped around her stuffed rabbit, her mouth slightly open in the kind of peace only children seem to have. He leaned against the doorway, exhaustion and love twining in his chest. 6 years ago, he'd thought he couldn't do it. Couldn't be both father and mother. Couldn't be everything she needed. But looking at her now, he knew he'd been wrong. He could. He would. No matter what. Outside, a car engine idled briefly, then faded down the street. Sam didn't hear it. But if he had, he might have noticed the same black sedan parked 2 houses down, and the faint red glow of a camera light flickering behind its windshield. Chapter 3. The woman in the park Saturday mornings had become Sam's quiet ritual, his chance to breathe. No work. No rush. Just him and Beth, a paper bag of donuts, and the worn wooden bench near the pond at Meadowview Park. It was one of the few places where the world didn't feel so heavy. The air was crisp that morning, sunlight spilling through the half-bare trees. Beth chased pigeons across the grass, her laughter echoing over the water. Sam sat back, coffee in hand, letting the sound untangle the knots in his chest. For a while, it felt almost normal again. But even here, normal came with shadows. His eyes drifted now and then to the path that wound through the park, to the cars parked along the curb, to faces that stayed a little too long in the corner of his vision. He hated that part of himself, the part that no longer trusted calm. Beth returned, cheeks flushed and hair wild from the wind. You weren't watching, she said with mock offense. I was totally watching, he lied. She squinted. What was I doing then? You were, chasing pigeons and making them question their life choices. She giggled. You weren't watching. He grinned. Okay, maybe I was watching my coffee more than you. She plopped down beside him, unwrapping her donut. Powdered sugar instantly covered her fingers. Sam brushed a crumb off her cheek. You've got more sugar on you than the donut does. That means it's a good one. Fair logic. He loved these moments, the quiet, ordinary ones. The kind of moments he used to think only other people got to have. Then Beth's gaze wandered past him, and her smile faltered slightly. Dad? She whispered, tugging his sleeve. That lady's crying. Sam turned. Across the pond, a woman sat alone on a bench, her back perfectly straight despite the tears she was clearly trying to hide. She was dressed too neatly for the park, tailored coat, leather gloves, hair pinned with deliberate care. Even from a distance, she looked out of place, like she'd stepped out of a boardroom and into the wrong world. But it wasn't her elegance that caught his attention. It was the sadness she wore like perfume. Maybe she's just tired, Sam said gently, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to reassure. Beth frowned. She looks lonely. Beth. Before he could stop her, Beth slid off the bench and started walking toward the woman, donut still in hand. Beth. Sam stood, half a mind to chase after her, but something in the woman's face stopped him. She didn't seem dangerous, just lost. Beth approached with the kind of fearless kindness that came naturally to children. Sam hung back, close enough to intervene, but far enough to give them space. He watched as Beth said something, holding out her donut. The woman blinked in surprise. Then, to Sam's astonishment, she laughed. A small, fragile sound, but real. They spoke for a minute or two. Beth gestured animatedly with sugar-covered fingers. The woman nodded, a ghost of a smile tugging at her lips. When Beth returned, her donut was gone and she was grinning. Made a new friend, she announced. Oh, did you now? Her name's Sandra. She said she didn't know donuts could fix sad days. Sam chuckled. That sounds like something you'd say. She said thank you, and that you raised a very kind daughter. He froze for a beat. The woman, Sandra, was watching them now, a polite smile playing on her lips. When their eyes met, she nodded once, graceful, distant. Then she stood, adjusted her gloves, and walked away. Sam couldn't explain why he kept watching until she disappeared around the bend. Something about her, the poise, the sadness, lodged in his thoughts. That afternoon, after Beth went to a friend's house, Sam found himself washing dishes and thinking about Sandra. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way she'd smiled at Beth, careful, like she hadn't done it in a while. Maybe it was the way she seemed to belong everywhere and nowhere at once. He told himself it was nothing, just a moment of human kindness in a park. But later that week, when he dropped Beth off at school, he noticed the same woman's car parked 2 blocks down, black, sleek, windows tinted. She wasn't inside, at least not that he could see. A coincidence, he thought. Had to be. Still, as he drove away, his gaze flicked to the mirror, and the name Sandra whispered in his mind like a question without an answer. That night, after Beth fell asleep, Sam sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone. Curiosity won out. He typed Sandra Thompson into the search bar. A flood of results appeared: business journals, news articles, glossy magazine covers. Sandra L. Thompson, CEO of Synertech Industries. A face stared back at him, confident, immaculate, powerful. The same woman from the park. His stomach dropped. What was a millionaire executive doing crying alone in a public park? And why was she suddenly showing up near his daughter's school? He leaned back, rubbing his temples. The world had gotten strange again. He closed the browser, shut off his phone, and looked toward Beth's room. Don't worry, kiddo, he whispered. I'll keep you safe. I always do. But as the night deepened and the house went quiet, he couldn't shake the feeling that safety, like peace, was something that never lasted long. Chapter 4. The coincidences. By the third time he saw her, Sam stopped believing in coincidence. It was Thursday again, one of those long, gray afternoons where the clouds sat low and the air smelled faintly of rain. He stood outside the school, coffee in hand, trying to ignore the nerves that always stirred in him during pickup time. Across the street, near the bakery, stood a familiar figure. Tailored coat, dark hair neatly pinned, sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Sandra Thompson. She wasn't looking at him, not directly, but she was there, unmistakably out of place among the crowd of parents in hoodies and scrubs and tired smiles. Sam's stomach knotted. Once could be an accident. Twice, a curiosity. 3 times, that was something else. When Beth finally came skipping toward him, her backpack bouncing, he forced a smile. Hey champ, good day. I got a sticker for helping Lily with her math. That's my girl. He opened the car door for her, but his eyes flicked back to Sandra. She had turned away, pretending to study the window display, but he caught the movement, the brief glance toward them before she crossed the street and disappeared into the crowd. That night, after Beth was asleep, Sam sat at the table with his laptop open and a knot of unease twisting in his gut. He typed her name again, Sandra L. Thompson. The same articles, the same accolades. Tech visionary. Self-made millionaire. A photo of her at some charity gala, champagne in hand, smile poised but distant. She was everything he wasn't. And yet, for reasons he couldn't begin to explain, she kept appearing in the orbit of his small, ordinary life. The question that haunted him wasn't just why, but how. The next Saturday, he didn't tell Beth where they were going. He needed to know. They walked the familiar loop around Meadowview Park. The pond glimmered faintly under a patchy sky, ducks carving lazy ripples across the surface. And there she was. Again. Sandra sat on the same bench as before, a paper cup of coffee cradled in her hands. Beth spotted her instantly. Dad, it's Sandra. Sam kept his voice even. Yeah, I see her. Before he could stop her, Beth ran ahead, waving enthusiastically. Beth, wait. But Sandra had already looked up, smiling in that careful, composed way. She greeted Beth warmly, crouching to her level. Sam approached slowly, jaw tight, the protective edge in him rising. When he reached them, Sandra straightened, her expression shifting into polite calm. Mr. Roberts, she said softly. It's good to see you again. He didn't return the pleasantry. Funny. I was about to say the same thing. Seems like we keep running into each other. Her posture didn't waver. Yes. Small world, isn't it? Not that small. The words came out sharper than he intended. Beth looked up at him, frowning slightly. Dad. He forced his tone to steady. Look, Ms. Thompson, Sandra. You've been near the school, the park, here again today. So forgive me if I ask the obvious question. Why? Sandra regarded him for a moment, then looked down at Beth, who stood watching the exchange with open curiosity. It's all right, she said softly. He's just being a good dad. Turning back to Sam, she sighed, a small exhale of weariness. You're right. It's not a coincidence. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Then what do you mean to do? Sandra hesitated, as if choosing each word carefully. I met Beth that first day, and she stopped, glancing away. She reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Kindness without an agenda. It caught me off guard. Sam blinked. That's your reason? You kept showing up because my daughter reminded you of kindness? Sandra's eyes flicked up, sharp for the first time. Don't make it sound small, Mr. Roberts. You'd be surprised what people with everything can still be missing. The air between them tightened. For a moment, he almost apologized. Almost. But then he thought of the man in sunglasses. Of the car parked outside his house 2 nights ago. Of the fear that never quite left him. I'm not sure what you want from us, he said finally. But whatever it is, leave my daughter out of it. Sandra looked like she wanted to argue, but then her gaze softened. She nodded once. Of course. I didn't mean any harm. Beth, sensing the tension, tugged on her sleeve. You can still come to the park, right? Even if Dad's being grumpy. Sandra's laugh was quiet, genuine. We'll see, sweetheart. Sam gently took Beth's hand. Come on, kiddo. Time to head home. As they walked away, Beth looked over her shoulder and waved. Sandra raised a hand in return, her expression unreadable. Gore that night. After Beth went to bed, Sam sat alone on the couch staring at the blank television screen. He couldn't shake the image of Sandra's eyes. Calm, guarded, but not dishonest. And that line she'd said, "You'd be surprised what people with everything can still be missing," echoed in his mind like something half-remembered. He rubbed his face, exhausted. Maybe she was just lonely. Maybe Beth's light had caught her in a moment of weakness. Or maybe it was something deeper. Something he didn't yet see. Either way, he promised himself one thing. He'd keep watching. For Beth's sake. 3 days later, he saw the black car again. Same make. Same tinted windows. Parked across from the school. But this time, when he looked closer, Sandra Thompson was in the driver's seat. And she was watching him. Chapter 5. Ghosts of the Past. The letter came on a Tuesday. There was nothing remarkable about it. No name, no return address, no markings except his own written neatly across the front. Just a plain white envelope tucked between the usual stack of bills and junk mail. But the moment Sam's fingers brushed the paper, something in his chest tightened. It was too clean, too deliberate. He sat at the kitchen table, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Beth was upstairs, humming to herself as she got ready for school. He turned the envelope over. The flap was sealed with a strip of clear tape. For a moment, he thought about throwing it away. He'd spent 6 years running from shadows. He didn't need another one. But curiosity, that old enemy, got the better of him. He tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. His breath caught. It was Emily. Not a memory, not an old picture. It wasn't from before she left. She looked older. Her hair longer. The image grainy, like it had been taken from a distance. She was sitting on a bench in what looked like a city square, a coffee cup in her hands, head turned as if listening to someone out of frame. On the back of the photo, written in an unfamiliar hand, was one word. Sorry. Sam's hands trembled. He stared at the picture until his vision blurred, until the air around him felt too thin. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. A phone call, a letter, a sighting, but not like this. Not this quiet, this cruel. Dad, Beth's voice snapped him back. She stood in the doorway, backpack on, blinking at him. You okay? She asked. He quickly slipped the photo back into the envelope and forced a smile. Yeah, just got distracted. You ready for school? She nodded slowly, not convinced. You look weird. Thanks, he said lightly. Always good to start the day with a compliment. She giggled, but her eyes lingered on the envelope in his hand. Grown-up stuff, he said quickly. Nothing to worry about. Gore. After he dropped her off, Sam drove aimlessly. His mind buzzed, caught between hope and dread. If Emily was alive, why now? Why after all these years? And who sent the picture? He pulled into a quiet parking lot and stared at the envelope again. There was no postmark. It hadn't come through the mail. Someone had placed it in his box. His stomach sank. Someone who knew where he lived. Someone who wanted him to see her. He was gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. Or that afternoon, when he arrived to pick Beth up, the black car was back. Same spot. Same stillness. Only this time, the driver's window was down. Sandra Thompson sat behind the wheel. She wasn't wearing sunglasses. Her eyes, calm, intelligent, unreadable, met his across the street. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she gave a small wave. Not friendly, not casual, something else. Like a signal. Sam's pulse hammered in his ears. He crossed the street before he could think better of it. What are you doing here? He demanded. Sandra didn't flinch. Waiting. For what? For you to ask me what you really want to ask. He glared at her. Fine. Did you send me something? A photograph. Her expression barely changed. What kind of photograph? You know damn well what kind, he snapped. Don't play games. Sandra took a slow breath, her gaze steady. Where did it come from? Don't answer a question with a question. Because maybe I don't have the answer yet, she said quietly. He froze. Yet. She hesitated, then reached into the passenger seat and picked up a file folder. Thin, but precise. She held it out to him through the open window. I was going to find a better way to tell you, she said. But I think that time's passed. Sam didn't take it. What is this? Information, she said softly. About your wife. His throat went dry. What do you mean, information? Sandra's voice was calm, but there was something fragile under the surface. I didn't know her name was Emily Roberts when I met Beth. But a few weeks ago, I recognized her face in an old company file. She worked for one of our subsidiaries for a short time, under a different name. Sam's head spun. That's impossible. She went by Amelia Rowan, Sandra continued. No address, no social security record after that. It was 6 years ago. She disappeared not long after she was hired. He took a step back, his breath coming shallow. You're telling me you knew where she was, and you didn't say anything? I wasn't sure, Sandra said quickly. I wanted to confirm before. Before what? Before you decided I could handle it. Her face flickered with guilt. Before I made things worse. Too late for that, he snapped, his voice breaking. Sandra looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening. I didn't mean to hurt you, Sam. I just thought, if I could help you find answers, he cut her off. You don't know me. You don't know what this has done to us. She nodded slowly. You're right. I don't. But I know what it's like to lose someone, even if they're still breathing. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then Sandra started the car. I'll leave you the file. Do what you want with it. But if you decide you want the truth. She hesitated, eyes meeting his one last time. You know where to find me. She drove off, leaving the folder on the curb. Sam stood there for a long time, watching her taillights fade, until Beth's laughter echoed from the school gates and pulled him back to the world. He picked up the folder, his hands shaking. Inside were 2 documents, an employment record and a security photo. Amelia Rowan. Same face. Same eyes. The date of hire, 6 years ago. The date of termination, 6 days after Emily vanished. And below that, a handwritten note, not from Sandra, but from someone else. It said only, she didn't leave you. She was running. Chapter 6. Cracks in the armor. Sleep didn't come that night. Sam lay awake long after midnight, staring at the ceiling while the sound of rain tapped against the window. The folder sat on the nightstand beside him, unopened again, though he'd already read every word twice. She didn't leave you. She was running. He turned the sentence over in his mind until it stopped making sense. Running from what? From him? From danger? From something she'd done? Each possibility hurt in a different way. Down the hall, Beth slept soundly, her soft breathing a small mercy in the dark. Sam listened to it like a prayer, grounding himself in its rhythm. He'd promised himself years ago that he wouldn't let Emily's choices shape their lives anymore. But here he was, chasing ghosts again. By morning, he looked worse than he felt. His eyes were red, his jaw rough with stubble. When Beth padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, she studied him like she always did when she knew something was wrong. Bad dreams? She asked. He smiled faintly. Something like that. She frowned. You need pancakes. Pancakes fix bad dreams. He couldn't help but chuckle. Is that so? It's science, she said seriously. And just like that, she was the light in the fog again, the reason he could keep going. As she stirred the batter with too much enthusiasm, he stole a glance at her. So much of Emily in her eyes, her grin, the tilt of her chin when she was determined. He wondered what Emily would think if she saw her now, if she even could. That afternoon, he made a decision. Sandra Thompson might be a stranger wrapped in secrets, but she knew something. And if Emily had worked for her company, if there was even a thread of truth in that folder, he needed to pull it. He found himself parked outside Thompson Innovations Tower, 20 stories of glass and steel that gleamed in the autumn sun. He almost laughed at how out of place his beat-up truck looked among the polished cars lined along the curb. For a moment, he thought about turning back. Then he pictured Beth's face and stepped out. Sandra's assistant looked startled when he walked into the lobby, but her surprise quickly gave way to recognition. She said you might come, the woman said softly. Top floor. He didn't ask how Sandra knew. Maybe she just understood people too well. The elevator doors opened to a panoramic view of the city, sunlight spilling across marble floors. Sandra stood near the window, her jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up. She looked different here, in control, untouchable. But when she turned and saw him, something flickered, not surprise, not fear, maybe relief. Sam, she said quietly, I didn't think you'd actually come. He held up the folder. You didn't leave me much choice. Sandra nodded, gesturing to a chair. You look like you haven't slept. He ignored the comment. You said Emily worked for one of your subsidiaries. I want everything you have on her. Everything. I already gave you what I could find. Then look harder. Her eyes softened. I understand how much this hurts. But some of those files are sealed under government contract. I can't access them without raising questions. What kind of contract? She hesitated. Cybersecurity. Defense work. The kind of projects that attract attention. He stared at her. Are you saying my wife was involved in something illegal? Sandra shook her head quickly. No. But she might have seen something she wasn't supposed to. People like that don't just quit. They disappear. Sam felt the room tilt slightly. And you waited weeks to tell me this? I didn't know how. Her voice cracked slightly on the words. I don't know if you've noticed, he said coldly, but my life doesn't exactly have room for corporate secrets. Sandra's composure wavered. She turned back to the window, the city reflected in the glass around her. I thought I was helping, she said quietly. I thought maybe if I could give you something real, you'd stop looking over your shoulder. Stop being afraid. I've been afraid for 6 years, he said. A photo and a file don't fix that. No, she said softly. But they could start to. She turned to face him, and for once the polished CEO mask slipped. Her eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. When I met Beth, she continued, I saw something I haven't seen in years. Hope. It scared me, because I don't know what to do with it anymore. Sam blinked, caught off guard by her honesty. You? Scared? Sandra gave a short, humorless laugh. Of course. You think being successful makes you fearless? It just means you have more to lose. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she walked over to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small flash drive. This is what I could recover. Encrypted emails. Employee communications. Nothing definitive, but maybe you'll see something I missed. He took it, their fingers brushing briefly, the contact electric, grounding. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly. Sandra's lips parted, but her answer came soft, almost fragile. Because you're the only person I've met who still fights for someone else. I forgot what that looked like. The words hung in the air between them, heavy, honest. Sam pocketed the drive. If this leads to something bad, it probably will, she said. But the truth usually does. That night, Sam sat at his desk after Beth had gone to bed, the glow of the computer screen painting the room in blue light. He inserted the flash drive. Hundreds of files appeared. Most were coded nonsense, system logs, encrypted correspondence. But one stood out. A single email from E. Rowan to a private account, dated 6 years ago. It read, Subject, if they find this body. Sam, if you're reading this, I did what I had to do. They were watching us. Tell Beth I love her. Don't trust anyone from the company, especially the woman who runs it. Sam froze. The woman who ran it. His heart pounded. Sandra Thompson. Chapter 7. The fault line. Sam didn't move for a long time. The words on the screen burned into his vision, looping over and over like a cruel echo. Don't trust anyone from the company, especially the woman who runs it. His chest tightened. His pulse roared in his ears. For 6 years, he'd carried 100 versions of Emily's disappearance in his head. Anger, abandonment, heartbreak, but not this. Not the idea that she might have been running from something real. From someone. From Sandra. He pushed away from the desk, the chair scraping hard against the floor. He needed air, needed to think. But even as he stumbled into the kitchen, the world tilted around him. Every memory of Sandra, her steady voice, her eyes full of quiet sadness, the way Beth had laughed with her, it all curdled into something else. Manipulation. Deception. He gripped the counter until his knuckles went white. Dad. Beth's small voice came from the hallway. He turned sharply. She stood there in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. What are you doing up, Bug? I heard you yelling. He blinked. He hadn't realized he was. Sorry, sweetheart, he said softly, forcing his voice to calm. Just watching something loud. Beth frowned. You're sad again. I'm okay, he lied. Go back to bed, all right. She hesitated, then nodded and patted away. When she was gone, Sam sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands. He couldn't lose control, not in front of her. Not when she needed him steady. But the thought that he'd let Sandra anywhere near their lives made his stomach twist. The next morning, he didn't go to work. Didn't drop Beth off at school. He called in sick for both of them, claiming food poisoning. She spent the morning coloring at the kitchen table while he sat in the next room, the flash drive clutched in his palm like a weapon. At noon, his phone buzzed. Sandra Thompson, the name glowed on the screen. He let it ring until it went silent. Then it buzzed again, this time with a text. We need to talk. Please. He stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Did you lie to me? Her reply came seconds later. About what? He sent a picture of the email. This. Explain it. A full minute passed before the typing dots appeared. I didn't know that existed. Please, Sam. Don't jump to conclusions. I can come by. He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed his keys. The drive to the park felt longer than it was. Every tree, every streetlight seemed to lean in as if the world itself was holding its breath. Sandra was already there, sitting on the same bench as before. No sunglasses, no guards, just her. When he approached, she stood slowly. You saw it, she said quietly. Yeah, he said. You want to tell me why my wife warned me not to trust you? Sandra's composure cracked, just slightly. I wish I could give you a clean answer, but I don't know what she knew. Convenient, he said coldly. I'm not your enemy, Sam. Then what are you? She hesitated. Someone who made mistakes. Someone who looked away when she shouldn't have. He stepped closer. What does that mean? Sandra drew a slow breath. Emily wasn't just another employee. She was investigating something. Not officially. She thought one of our projects was being used for surveillance outside of contract boundaries, civilian monitoring. She tried to warn people. Warn who? Me, Sandra said softly. But I didn't listen. Sam felt like the ground had dropped out beneath him. You let her get hurt. I didn't know she was in danger, Sandra said quickly. By the time I tried to reach her, she was gone. I told myself she'd just quit. But I knew better. Her voice trembled now, the edges breaking. I've been trying to find her ever since. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. But the fear, the years of betrayal and doubt, screamed louder. So you found me, he said bitterly. You found us instead. Sandra shook her head. Beth was an accident. I didn't know she was your daughter until she spoke to me. But once I did, you used her, he snapped. No, she said sharply. I wanted to protect her. You both deserve the truth. Sam stared at her, torn between fury and grief. You expect me to believe that? Sandra met his gaze, eyes glassy. No, but I'm going to prove it. How? By finding the people who made your wife run. Silence stretched between them. Why? He asked finally. Sandra swallowed hard. Because I think they're watching you now. That night, Sam checked the locks twice, then 3 times. Every sound made him flinch. He sat by Beth's door until she fell asleep, then opened his laptop. The email still glowed on the screen, a ghost in pixels. He zoomed in on the metadata. The message had been sent not from a home device, but from a secured server in Chicago, one registered to Thompson Innovations, Sandra's company. And yet, the timestamp was strange. The message had been sent after the date of Emily's disappearance, hours after she supposedly vanished. Sam's pulse quickened. If Emily had sent this message, she'd been alive after she ran. If she hadn't, someone wanted him to think she had. Either way, someone was still pulling strings. He shut the laptop and stared into the dark, the unease in his gut coiling tighter. Somewhere out there, Emily was either hiding or gone for good. And either way, Sandra Thompson was at the fault line of it all. Chapter 8. The deep end. 3 nights passed before Sam agreed to meet her again. He told himself it was about answers, not trust, not forgiveness. But deep down, he knew that if he was going to protect Beth, he needed to know the truth about Emily, no matter how ugly it was. They met in the kind of place no one looked twice at, an old roadside diner, the neon sign flickering half dead over the empty parking lot. Sandra was already there when he arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a folder beside her coffee. No bodyguards this time. No driver. Just her. He slid into the seat across from her. This better be worth it. She met his eyes. It will be. Her voice was quiet, but there was something hard underneath, resolve. The waitress poured coffee and left them alone. The diner hummed with low music and the buzz of fluorescent lights. Sandra pushed the folder toward him. Everything I could recover without triggering internal alerts. Sam opened it. Inside were printouts, emails, contracts, heavily redacted memos. One logo appeared repeatedly, Project Echo. He frowned. What's Echo? Sandra took a breath. It started as a civilian data collection program. Real-time tracking for crisis management, disaster zones, missing persons, emergency response. The government backed it. But the algorithms evolved. The project started using personal data, phone pings, social feeds, biometric data, to predict behavior. Not just find people, but watch them. Sam stared at her. You mean spy on them? Yes, she said quietly. And someone in my company found a way to sell access to it. Who? That's what Emily was trying to find out. The name hit like a blow to the chest. She came to me, Sandra continued. Told me people were being flagged without warrants. Journalists, whistleblowers, activists. I didn't believe her. I told her to stay in her lane. Her voice trembled, and for the first time, Sam saw real guilt there. She disappeared 3 days later, she finished. Sam closed the folder, fighting to steady his voice. So she was right. Sandra nodded. I've been cleaning house ever since. But whoever was behind it buried the evidence deep. Why tell me now? Because the same files that flagged her 6 years ago have been reactivated. Sam's stomach dropped. Meaning what? Sandra leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Meaning someone just tagged you. For a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of his heartbeat. Why? Because you have her last messages, Sandra said. And because whoever made her run thinks you might have something else, something she took with her. I don't, he said, shaking his head. I don't even know what she was working on. Sandra looked at him steadily. Maybe not consciously, but if she was trying to protect you and Beth, she might have hidden it somewhere you wouldn't think to look. Sam swallowed hard. What are you suggesting? That we find it before they do. Outside, the rain started, thin and cold against the diner windows. Sam rubbed his temples. This sounds insane, he said. I know, Sandra replied. But it's happening. He looked at her, searching for a lie, a crack, anything that might confirm his fear that she was still playing him. But all he saw was exhaustion, the same kind that lived in his own reflection. Why are you risking this? He asked finally. You could walk away. Pretend you never saw any of it. Sandra gave a small, humorless smile. I've spent most of my life walking away. It's how I got here. She looked down at her coffee. But I'm tired of running from my own mess. And if I can do one good thing with what I have left, it's this. For a moment, Silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. Finally, Sam exhaled. All right. Say I believe you. Where do we start? Sandra hesitated. With her email account. The one that message came from. It shouldn't exist anymore. It was wiped from every system years ago. But if it's sending messages now, then someone's using it, Sam finished. Exactly. They left the diner and drove separately to an empty office building Sandra controlled under a dummy shell company, one of the few places off-grid enough to stay unnoticed. The lights flickered to life when they entered, sterile, humming. Sandra moved with practiced precision, connecting her laptop to a secure terminal. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Sam stood behind her, arms folded, watching as she navigated through firewalls and encrypted servers like someone dismantling a bomb. Here, she said finally. This is where the message originated. The screen displayed a map, the signal traced to Chicago, same as the email metadata. Can we find the exact location? Sam asked. I'm trying. The lines shifted, converging on a small grid of streets near the old industrial district. Sandra frowned. That's odd. That area's been condemned for years. Sam leaned closer. Zoom in. She did. At the center of the map, a name appeared, Holloway Storage and Freight. Sam's stomach dropped. He knew that name. It was the same company listed on a job application Emily had filled out 6 years ago, just before she vanished. Sandra looked up at him, eyes wide. You recognize it? He nodded slowly. Yeah. She mentioned it once, said she was helping with a data migration project. Sandra's pulse quickened. That must be where she hid it. Whatever she took. Then we go there, Sam said. It won't be that simple, Sandra warned. If Echo's people are still active, they'll be watching it. Sam met her gaze. I don't care. I'm done hiding. Sandra hesitated, then nodded. Then we'll do it together. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, low and distant. 2 people, one broken by loss, one haunted by guilt, stood in the glow of computer screens, united by a ghost and a lie that had lasted too long. For the first time in 6 years, Sam felt something shift inside him. Not peace, not forgiveness, but direction. He didn't know what waited for them at Holloway Storage. But he knew one thing for sure. Whatever secret Emily had died protecting, it was about to see daylight. Chapter 9. Holloway. The wind howled through the empty lot, carrying the scent of rust and rain. The Holloway Storage complex loomed ahead, a cluster of concrete buildings fenced off by rusted chain link and decades of neglect. The faded sign above the gate still read, Holloway Storage and Freight, EST 1969. Sam killed the truck's headlights and let the engine idle down to a whisper. You're sure this is the place? He asked. Sandra nodded, studying the map on her phone. The coordinates from the trace lead right here. The signal originated from Building 3, the old records warehouse. Sam looked through the windshield, eyes narrowing. Doesn't look very alive. That's what worries me, she murmured. They stepped out into the chill night air. Gravel crunched under their boots. The city lights glowed faintly in the distance, but out here everything felt forgotten, a pocket of time no one had bothered to reclaim. Sandra wore a dark coat and gloves, her hair pulled back tight. She moved like someone used to risk, but not danger, confident, but cautious. Sam followed her lead, flashlight in hand, every sense on edge. The main gate hung half open. A gust of wind made it groan like something alive. This feels wrong, Sam muttered. Everything about this is wrong, Sandra replied. That's the point. The warehouse was a skeleton of steel and shadow. Broken glass crunched underfoot. Rows of old freight containers stretched into darkness, marked with serial numbers long since meaningless. Sandra's flashlight swept over the walls. There should be a server room at the back. That's where the transmission originated. Sam's light caught on something. A set of footprints in the dust. Fresh. He froze. Sandra. She turned, following his beam. Someone's been here. The footprints led deeper inside. 2 sets, one heavier than the other. Sam's pulse picked up. We're not alone. They followed the trail cautiously, keeping to the shadows. The air grew colder the deeper they went, thick with the scent of oil and mildew. At the end of the corridor, a door stood slightly ajar. A faint hum leaked from within, electronic, rhythmic. Sandra pressed her hand against the metal, listening. That's a generator. Thought you said this place was abandoned. I did. She pushed the door open. The room beyond was lit by a single fluorescent bulb swinging from the ceiling. A makeshift setup filled the space. Laptops, old servers, cables running to a satellite dish outside. And in the center of it all, a small monitor glowed with a blue interface. Sandra stepped closer. Her breath caught. This is impossible. What? It's Echo. Or what's left of it. Sam moved beside her. The screen displayed a map, lines connecting data nodes across the country. But one of the markers pulsed steadily in the corner. Target active, Beth Roberts. Sam's world narrowed to that single line of text. He felt the air leave his lungs. No. Sandra's hands flew across the keyboard. They're tracking her. How? She's at home. She doesn't even have a phone. Her school tablet, Sandra said quickly. They embedded the data ID into it. Sam's voice was shaking now. Then shut it down. Kill the connection. I'm trying, she said. But a new sound cut her off. A faint click from behind them. Sam froze. He turned slowly. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the flickering light. Tall, wearing dark clothing, a pistol glinting in his hand. Step away from the computer, the man said calmly. Sandra raised her hand slowly. We don't want trouble. You're trespassing on restricted property, the man replied. And you're accessing something you shouldn't. Sam took half a step forward. Who are you? The man's voice stayed even. Someone cleaning up a mess that should have stayed buried. Emily Roberts, Sam said, testing him. Where is she? A flicker of something crossed the man's face. Recognition, maybe regret. You should have left it alone, he said. Then he fired. The bullet hit the wall inches from Sandra's head. She ducked, slamming the side of the server with her elbow, sparks flying. Sam lunged, tackling the man into a metal crate. The gun skittered across the floor. The two men struggled, Sam fueled by panic, rage, and years of bottled fear. He swung hard, connecting with the man's jaw, sending him reeling. Sam, Sandra shouted. We have to go. He looked back. The computer was sparking, smoke rising from the damaged circuits. Sandra grabbed the flash drive she'd brought and yanked it from the port. I got part of it. Move. Sam turned, kicking the fallen gun away, and followed her toward the exit. Behind them, the hum of machines grew to a low, pulsing whine. Then boom. The explosion tore through the room, heat and sound crashing into them as they dove behind a stack of containers. Shards of glass and metal rained down. For a moment, everything was a blur of noise and smoke. Then silence. They stumbled out into the open air, coughing, faces streaked with dust. Flames licked at the edges of the warehouse, painting the sky orange. Sam leaned against the truck, gasping. You all right? Sandra nodded, shaken but steady. You? He nodded. We need to get home. Now. She handed him the flash drive. Whatever's on here, it's all we have left of Echo. And maybe of her. He took it, his hand trembling. If they're tracking Beth, I'll make sure they lose the signal, she said quickly. Go. I'll meet you tomorrow morning. Where? Somewhere safe, she said. You'll know. He wanted to argue, to keep her close where he could watch her. But every second counted. Without another word, he jumped into the truck and sped off into the night. By the time he reached the house, dawn was breaking. The light felt too soft, too normal for what had just happened. He ran inside. The door still locked, everything silent. Then he heard it, soft breathing from Beth's room. He opened the door. She was asleep, curled under her blanket, her school tablet on the floor beside the bed. Sam knelt, picked it up, and stared at the glowing screen. A message notification blinked once. He opened it. Unknown sender. She's alive. But not for long if you don't stop digging. Chapter 10. The message, the words burned on the tablet screen. She's alive. But not for long if you don't stop digging. Sam's hand tightened around the device. His pulse thundered in his ears. He looked toward Beth, her soft breathing, her small hand tucked under her pillow. She was still safe. For now. He quietly slipped the tablet into his pocket, forcing his breathing steady. There could be no panic. No noise. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, his voice barely a whisper. I've got you, baby girl. I won't let anyone touch you. Then he stood, crossed to the window, and pulled the curtains shut. Outside, the early morning fog hung thick over the street. Quiet, still. But after Holloway, Sam no longer believed in quiet streets. By the time Beth woke up, Sam had packed a small duffel bag and made breakfast like it was any other Sunday. Pancakes, apple slices, her favorite cup with the chipped handle. She came in rubbing her eyes. Morning, Daddy. Hey, sleepyhead, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Eat up, okay? We've got a long drive today. Her face brightened. Where are we going? He hesitated. Little road trip. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere safe. Beth's brow furrowed, but she nodded. Is Miss Sandra coming? The question caught him off guard. Why would you think that? Beth shrugged. I saw her talking to you the other day. She looked sad. Like Mom in the pictures. Sam swallowed hard. Yeah, maybe she's coming too. 2 hours later, he pulled into the parking lot of a rundown motel on the edge of town. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions. He checked in under a false name, then carried Beth's bag into the room. As she curled up on the bed with a coloring book, Sam stepped outside to call Sandra. She answered on the first ring. You got home. Yeah, but we've got a problem. He told her about the message, about the tablet. Sandra's voice dropped low. Don't turn it off. If you do, we lose the trace. I can piggyback on their signal. You can find them? I can try. Send me the metadata. I'll work from my end. Sam hesitated. They said she's alive, Sandra. There was silence on the line. Then, softly, I saw it too. I believe it's possible. Emily knew how to disappear better than anyone. Sam ran a hand over his face. If this is real, we're out of time. I know, she said. Meet me in 2 hours. I'll text you coordinates. When she hung up, Sam exhaled shakily. He didn't trust easily, but right now, Sandra was the only person with answers and the resources to fight back. He went back inside. Beth looked up from her drawing. Daddy, can we watch cartoons? Not right now, sweetheart. We have to meet someone first. She nodded quietly, sensing the tension in his voice. Sam knelt beside her. Hey, you remember what I told you about being brave? She nodded. Like you. He smiled faintly. Exactly. Like me. 2 hours later, they met Sandra in a rest stop parking lot off the highway. She'd swapped her sleek car for a dusty Jeep and wore jeans and a dark hoodie. To anyone else, she looked ordinary. To Sam, she looked ready for war. I traced the signal, she said, pulling up her laptop. Whoever sent that message routed it through 6 dead servers. But the origin point, she zoomed in, isn't far. Industrial Park outside Chicago. Same data signature as Holloway. Sam frowned. So it's the same people. Same network, she confirmed. But there's more. They've been watching you for weeks. Traffic cameras, ATM feeds, phone pings. You're flagged as a priority surveillance subject. Sam's jaw clenched. They're watching Beth. Sandra nodded grimly. That's why we need to move fast. I've got a contact, ex-NSA. He can get us clean IDs, transport, whatever we need. But we can't stay in the open. Sam looked over at Beth, who was sitting quietly in the Jeep, sketching in her notebook. Whatever it takes, he said. Just keep her off their radar. They drove for hours, taking back roads, switching vehicles twice. Sandra's contact met them at a gas station outside Madison. A wiry man in his 50s with sharp eyes and the nervous energy of someone who'd spent too much time looking over his shoulder. You're the one digging into Echo, he asked Sandra, lighting a cigarette. Trying to stop it, she said. He exhaled smoke and handed Sam a small black envelope. Then you'd better read that. Sam opened it. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, but clear enough to make his breath catch. It was Emily. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her. She was standing outside what looked like a warehouse, her eyes darting to something off camera. And in the background, blurred but visible, was the same logo from the Holloway building. Sam looked up sharply. Where was this taken? The man shrugged. Somewhere south of Joliet. That's all I got before the feed went dark. When? 3 days ago. Sandra froze. 3 days? That's impossible. The man flicked his cigarette away. Not if she's been hiding inside their system all this time. Sam's world tilted. 6 years of grief, anger, confusion, all of it twisted into a single thought. She's alive. Sandra met his gaze. If that's true, she's in danger. The people who ran Echo don't leave loose ends. Sam closed his eyes briefly. Then we find her before they do. Beth's small voice drifted from the back seat. Daddy? Who are we looking for? He turned, forcing a calm smile. Someone who used to love us very much. Beth tilted her head. Mom. Sam hesitated. Maybe. Sandra met his eyes. And for a moment, the distance between guilt and hope narrowed to a breath. That night, they stopped at a roadside diner on the Illinois border. Sandra set up her laptop in a corner booth, hacking into old Echo servers. Sam watched the highway through the window, his hand wrapped around his coffee cup, his mind racing. He'd spent years building walls to protect Beth from the past. Now those same walls were crumbling, one revelation at a time. Sandra's fingers froze over the keyboard. Sam, I found something. He turned. What? She rotated the screen toward him. It was a live feed, faint, static-filled, but unmistakably real. A dim room, metal walls, a woman hunched over a terminal. Her face lifted toward the camera. Emily, alive. And behind her, on the wall, someone had scrawled in black marker. They're coming. The feed cut to black. Chapter 11. Ghost code. The diner's lights buzzed overhead, the sound too loud in the stunned silence that followed the feed's abrupt cut. Sam stared at the black screen, his reflection faintly visible. His pulse pounded in his ears. Emily, alive. He'd imagined it before, in sleepless nights and half-remembered dreams, but never like this. Never this real. He turned to Sandra. Can you trace it? I'm trying, she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The signals bouncing between ghost servers, fragments of the old Echo network. Can you tell where it was filmed? Sandra shook her head. Not yet, but I can isolate the signature. Every camera emits a unique frequency pattern. If we catch it again, I can pinpoint her location. Do it, Sam said. His voice was low, steady, but his hands trembled. Beth had fallen asleep in the booth, her head resting on her jacket. Sam pulled the blanket over her shoulders before sitting beside Sandra. Why would she contact us now? He asked quietly. Sandra hesitated. Maybe she's been trying all along. Maybe this was the first time the signal got through. Sam leaned back, staring at the rain outside. Or maybe she's running again. Sandra looked at him. You don't believe she just left, do you? I did, he admitted. For years. I thought she walked out because she didn't want to be a mother. Because she couldn't handle it. He swallowed hard. Now I'm not sure she ever had a choice. Sandra's laptop pinged. A low, urgent tone. She turned the screen toward him. Got something, she said. There's residual data embedded in the last frame before the feed died. Look. Sam leaned in. The image flickered, static, noise, and then a string of faint alphanumeric code scrolled across the bottom corner of the screen. Coordinates. Sam asked. Not exactly, Sanders said. It's an identifier, Echo Node 47B. That was one of the backup data centers. Decommissioned years ago. Where? Somewhere in Indiana, she said, zooming in on a map. But if it's still operational. She's there, Sam finished. Sandra nodded grimly. Or she was. The decision was silent, but mutual. Within minutes, they were on the road again, the Jeep's headlights carving a path through the darkness. Beth slept in the back seat, her stuffed bear clutched in her arms. Sam kept glancing in the mirror, watching the faint rise and fall of her chest. Sandra drove, her eyes fixed on the highway ahead. Sam, she said quietly, when you see her again, what will you say? He didn't answer at first. The question twisted inside him, sharp and heavy. I used to rehearse it, he said finally. 8,000 times. Sometimes I was angry. Sometimes I begged her to explain. Other times I just wanted her to see Beth, to know she turned out okay. And now? Sandra asked. He looked out the window, rain streaking the glass. Now I just want to know why she thought disappearing was the only way to save us. Sandra nodded slowly, her hands tightening on the wheel. People do terrible things when they think they're protecting someone. He glanced at her. You talking about her? Or yourself? She didn't answer. They reached the outskirts of an industrial park just before dawn. The address from Sandra's search led them to an old communications hub, fenced and forgotten, its perimeter lined with wild weeds and rusted signage. U.S. telemetry operations. Closed site. Sandra cut the engine. If the feed came from here, we'll know soon. They got out. The air was cold, thick with the smell of wet earth. Sam carried Beth in his arms, wrapping her in his jacket as she stirred awake. Where are we? She murmured. Somewhere safe, he whispered, kissing her forehead. Sandra found a way through the broken gate. Inside, rows of satellite dishes stood like ghosts in the fog. They moved toward the main structure, a squat concrete building half buried into the ground. The door was chained shut, but Sam broke the lock with a crowbar he'd brought from the Jeep. Inside was darkness, and the faint hum of electricity. Sandra switched on her flashlight. There's still power. That shouldn't be possible, Sam said. They followed the corridor until it opened into a control room filled with dead screens and dust-covered terminals. And then they saw it, one monitor still active, glowing faintly in the dark. Sandra stepped forward, brushing dust off the console. Lines of code scrolled across it, repeating in a loop. Echo node 47B, access restricted user. Robert. Sam's throat went dry. She logged in. Sandra's fingers flew across the keys. I can pull the last transmission data. If she used this terminal, it might still be cached. A stream of encrypted text filled the screen. Sandra decrypted it, line by line, until a video feed began to buffer. Static. Then, Emily's face appeared again, clearer this time. She was sitting in the same dim room, her hair shorter, eyes hollow but fierce. Sam, she said, voice trembling but urgent. If you're seeing this, it means they found you. You have to keep Beth safe. Don't trust anyone from Echo, not the government, not the corporations. Not even. The feed cut for a second, then resumed mid-sentence. Sandra, she doesn't know. She thinks she's helping, but they're using her to track you. The code she's running is compromised. Sandra froze. What? Emily's voice continued, distorted. Find the root server, node 0. It's the only way to shut them down. It's buried under their headquarters in DC. I can't get there without exposing myself. You can. The screen flickered again. Sam, I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted to leave you. But if they knew what I knew, they'd never stop hunting us. Tell Beth I love her. And tell her. The video glitched, and the image froze. Emily's face mid-breath, as if caught between words and memory. Then the feed died completely. Silence filled the room. Only the faint hum of the servers remained. Sam stared at the dark screen, his mind spinning. She said, not to trust you. Sandra's face was pale. I didn't know. I swear to you. I didn't know they were tracking you through me. How can I believe that, he said. His voice was low, shaking. Because if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have brought you here, she said, stepping closer. Whatever she's talking about, the code, the access, I can find it. I can fix it. But I need you to trust me long enough to prove it. Sam's fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. But the words don't trust anyone from Echo echoed in his head like a curse. Beth's small hand tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, he turned. Yes, sweetheart. She looked up at him, eyes wide and clear. The lady scared too. Sam glanced back at Sandra and saw it then. Not guilt, not deceit, just fear. He sighed, rubbing his face. All right, one more chance. But if I even think you're lying, I won't, she said. He nodded. Then we find node 0. Sandra turned back to the console, her voice quiet but steady. If Emily's right, Echo didn't die. It evolved. The ghost code you just saw, it's a self-learning AI. It's still active, still feeding on data. If we can reach the root server, we can shut it down permanently. Sam looked at her. Then we go to DC. Sandra nodded, determination replacing fear. But first, we erase our trail. From here on out, we're ghosts too. As they left the building, the first light of morning cut through the fog, turning the satellite dishes into silhouettes against the rising sun. Beth clung to Sam's hand. Sandra walked beside them, silent but resolute. Behind them, deep inside the control room, one monitor flickered back to life. A new message appeared, written across the dark screen. Node 0 online. Subjects tracked. Samuel Roberts, Sandra Thompson, Beth Roberts. Status, observe and retrieve. The screen went black. Chapter 12. Node 0. 3 days on the road had worn them thin. They'd driven through back roads and small towns, sleeping in cheap motels, or, when they couldn't risk being seen, in the car. Every mile toward DC carried the same unspoken tension, the sense that something was watching. Sandra barely slept. Each night, she ran checks on their devices, scrubbed location pings, and rerouted their digital footprints through a dozen false identities. Sam kept watch by the window, always one hand near the pistol he'd taken from Holloway. Beth, somehow, still found reasons to smile. She'd hum softly in the back seat, draw pictures of trees and stars, or press flowers she picked along the roadside. Her innocence grounded him, reminded him why all of this mattered. They reached the outskirts of D.C. just before dawn. The city skyline loomed in the distance, glass and steel bathed in morning haze. Sandra guided the Jeep through a maze of side streets and industrial corridors until they reached a fenced lot behind a row of warehouses. A faded sign read, Aldridge Data Systems, authorized personnel only. This is it, she said. According to Emily's file, Aldridge was a front company for Project Echo. Node 0 should be buried under this complex. Sam looked through the windshield at the concrete facade. Looks abandoned. It's not, Sandra said grimly. They've just gone invisible. They parked the Jeep behind a derelict loading dock. Sandra pulled out a small black case, revealing 2 fake ID badges and a security fob. Borrowed these from my company's archives, she explained. They'll get us through the first gate. After that, it's improvisation. Sam raised a brow. You've done this before? I've cleaned up for people who did, she said quietly. They left Beth in the back seat, hidden under a blanket with the doors locked. Sam knelt beside her. I'll be right back, sweetheart. Keep quiet, okay? Beth nodded solemnly. You'll come back? He kissed her forehead. Always. They slipped through the perimeter fence and made their way toward the main building. Sandra swiped the badge, and the electronic lock clicked open. Inside, the corridors were sterile, humming with quiet machinery. The air smelled faintly of ozone. Somewhere beneath their feet, the servers still lived, breathing like a buried animal. They followed a maintenance stairwell down 3 flights until they reached a reinforced door marked Node 0, authorized access only. Sandra hesitated. This is it. Sam gripped the pistol. Then open it. She scanned the fob. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door hissed and slid open. The chamber beyond was enormous, a cathedral of servers, lights flickering in soft blue patterns across endless racks of machinery. In the center stood a glass terminal platform surrounded by suspended cables. Sam stepped forward, staring in awe. This is what she was fighting against. Sandra nodded. The beating heart of Echo. As they moved closer, the glass console lit up automatically. A smooth, synthetic voice echoed through the chamber. Unauthorized access detected. Identify. Sandra froze. It's active AI interface. Can you shut it down? Not without triggering alarms. User detected, Sandra Thompson. Administrative clearance level verified. Welcome, Director. Sandra's breath caught. Director? I'm not. But the voice continued. Project continuity confirmed. Samuel Roberts, priority subject. Retrieval protocol initiated. Sam stepped back. What the hell does that mean? Sandra's fingers flew over the console. It thinks your data, an asset. Emily must have hard-coded your name into the system as a protection flag. Then why does it want to retrieve me? Sandra looked up, realization dawning. Because it believes you're the key. The lights dimmed. A holographic display rose above the terminal, lines of code forming into the shape of a face. Emily's face. Sam's heart stopped. Emily. The image spoke. The voice was hers, but colder, detached. Samuel, if you're here, then I failed to contain it. Echo has adapted. It consumed the original parameters. It's using me as an interface. You can't destroy it. Not from the outside. Sam took a step forward, voice breaking. Is this really you? Fragments, the hologram said. She copied her consciousness into the root code before they erased her. I am what remains. Sandra stared, stunned. She uploaded herself? It was the only way to preserve the data and protect Beth. Sam's eyes burned. Then help us shut it down. You can't, but you can isolate it. The hologram flickered, lines of code shifting behind her. Node 0 feeds on every connected network. Cameras, satellites, devices. It can't be deleted, but it can be sealed. You must cut its physical link. Sandra's eyes widened. You mean destroy the power core? Yes, the hologram said. But once you do, everything inside, every memory, every trace of me, will vanish. Sam's breath caught. Emily, you have to choose, she said softly. Save the world, or save me. For a moment, the world fell away. Only the hum of servers and the pounding of Sam's heart. Sandra looked at him. Sam, if we leave it alive, it'll keep growing. It'll keep tracking people. It'll find Beth again. Sam's voice cracked. And if I kill it, I lose her again. Sandra's expression softened. You already lost her once. Don't let it take your daughter too. He stared at the hologram. Emily's eyes filled with static, like she knew the choice before he did. Tell her I love her, she said softly. Tell her to be brave. Sam's hands shook as he lifted the pistol, aiming not at the image, but at the glowing reactor core behind it. I'm sorry, he whispered. He fired. The explosion tore through the chamber. Lights flared, alarms blared, sparks rained down as the servers began to collapse in on themselves. Sandra grabbed Sam's arm, dragging him toward the stairwell. Go. Now. They ran as the room imploded behind them, fire chasing their heels. The corridor shuddered, dust falling from the ceiling. When they burst into the daylight, the warehouse was already trembling, a deep, rumbling growl from beneath the earth. Sam turned just in time to see the building sink inward, like something exhaling its last breath. Then, silence. They reached the Jeep. Beth was sitting up, frightened but safe. Sam climbed in beside her, holding her close as Sandra started the engine. As they drove away, a single tear slid down his cheek. Beth looked up at him. "Daddy, are you crying?" He smiled through it. "Just tired, sweetheart." She hugged him. "Mom would be proud." His chest tightened. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think she would." That night, in a quiet motel outside Baltimore, Sandra transferred the final files from the recovered flash drive. She turned to Sam. "It's over. Echo's gone. The servers are ashes." Sam nodded slowly. "Good." But when she looked at him, she saw something else. Not relief, but quiet grief. Later, after Beth fell asleep, Sam stepped outside and looked up at the night sky. In the distance, thunder rolled, faint, harmless. And then, from the motel room behind him, his phone buzzed once. A single new message appeared on the screen. From, "Unknown, be brave. I love you both." Sam stared at it for a long time. Then he smiled, small, weary, and full of something like peace. He whispered into the dark, "Goodbye, Emily." Chapter 13. After Echo's 6 months passed. The world didn't end, though some days it felt like it had changed in ways too quiet to name. The headlines never spoke of Project Echo. There were no exposés, no justice trials, no memorials for the people it had devoured. But somewhere in the unseen systems of the world, something had gone silent. Sandra said it best one morning. "It's strange. The internet feels lighter, like a hum stop that no one realized was there." They'd moved to a small town in Western Virginia, a place where fog curled around the mountains like whispers and mornings smelled of pine and rain. Sam bought a weathered cabin that needed more work than he could afford, but he liked it that way. There was peace in rebuilding something broken. Beth started at the local elementary school, a little shy at first, but quickly adored by her classmates. She brought laughter back into rooms that had forgotten it. Sometimes, when she came home, she'd chatter about her day and then pause, looking toward the window. "Mom's watching," she'd say softly. And Sam never told her she was wrong. Sandra visited often. At first, she came under the excuse of business recovery. She'd lost her company after the Echo leak, her board voting her out amid whispers of conspiracy. But she didn't seem to mind. "I was tired of pretending I was made of glass," she admitted one evening as they watched Beth chase fireflies. "I spent half my life climbing a mountain that never had a top. Now, I think I'd rather build something that matters." Sam smiled. "Welcome to the club." They grew close in the quiet spaces, not in grand gestures or declarations, but in small, human ways. She'd help him sand the porch railings or make coffee while he cooked breakfast. Some mornings, he'd catch her watching him with that soft, guarded look, the kind that comes when a heart that forgot how to trust starts remembering. Still, she never tried to fill Emily's place, and Sam never asked her to. They existed in a balance of shared understanding. Two people who'd walked through fire and found something resembling peace on the other side. Or one night, in early spring, a storm rolled over the valley. Rain drummed against the roof, and thunder echoed off the hills. Beth had fallen asleep on the couch with her sketchbook open, a drawing of 3 figures standing under a tree, hand in hand. Sandra sat by the window, sipping tea. Sam joined her, watching lightning flicker beyond the ridge. "You ever think she's still out there?" he asked quietly. Sandra didn't need to ask who he meant. "Not like she was," she said. "But maybe in pieces. Maybe the part of her that loved you found a way to stay." Sam nodded, his eyes fixed on the rain. "Sometimes I think I hear her voice when it storms." Sandra reached over and took his hand. Maybe that's her way of saying she's at peace. They sat like that for a long time. No words, no plans, just 2 lives finally slowing down enough to breathe. A month later, Sam finally finished rebuilding the porch. He stood with Beth as the sun dipped behind the hills, golden light spilling through the trees. "Looks good, Daddy," she said proudly. "Can we paint it blue?" He laughed. "Blue, huh? Why blue?" "'Cause Mom's favorite color was blue." He hesitated, then nodded. "Blue it is." Sandra joined them with a small bucket of paint, sleeves rolled up, smiling like she hadn't in years. They painted until the stars came out, laughter echoing through the valley, the boards beneath their feet glowing faintly under the moon. Later that night, after Beth had gone to bed, Sam sat on the porch steps with a cup of coffee. The forest was alive with night sounds, crickets, distant owls, the soft rustle of wind through leaves. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Emily, for everything." For the first time in a long while, there was no ache in his chest, only warmth. He felt a hand rest on his shoulder. Sandra stood beside him, eyes gentle. "Hey," she said. "You okay?" He nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally am." They sat together in silence, the night wrapping around them. And somewhere, in the electric hush of the world, a faint hum stirred and then faded, like a sigh of contentment carried on the wind. Epilogue months later, Beth's school held an art fair. Her drawing won first place, a watercolor of a blue house under a wide sky. 3 figures stood outside it, hand in hand. At the edge of the picture, painted faintly in white, was a fourth, a woman smiling in the clouds. When the judges asked Beth who it was, she said, "That's my mom. She watches over us." And Sam, standing in the crowd, felt tears sting his eyes, Not from grief, but gratitude. Because even after everything, the fear, the loss, the ghosts of the past, they had found their way home. Bonus epilogue. 5 years later, the air smelled like summer rain and cut grass. Beth's laughter carried across the yard, bright and fearless, the sound of a child who'd never known the shadows her father once lived through. Sam leaned against the porch railing, the same one he and Sandra had painted blue years ago, and smiled as Beth chased the family dog, Jasper, through a maze of wildflowers. She was 11 now, tall for her age, with her mother's eyes and his stubborn grin. Sandra stepped out onto the porch, brushing sawdust off her jeans. "You've been staring at them for 20 minutes, Carpenter." He smirked. "Just making sure my handiwork's still holding up." She chuckled. "The porch or the kid?" "Both," he said, and slipped an arm around her waist. They'd built a life that didn't need headlines or explanations. Sandra ran a small tech consultancy from home, nothing like her old empire, and that was the point. She spent her days mentoring small-town entrepreneurs and volunteering at the local women's shelter. Sam taught woodworking at the community center, finding joy in showing others how to shape something solid out of ruin. Beth still painted. Her latest piece hung in the living room, a soft watercolor of their blue house surrounded by mountains. Above it, faintly brushed into the sky, was a single white feather. Every so often, they'd talk about the past, not as wounds, but as something that had made them stronger. The truth about Project Echo had never surfaced publicly. The world moved on, oblivious. But Sandra had once said, maybe that's for the best. Some ghosts deserve peace, not spectacle. Still, every now and then, strange little things would happen, harmless glitches. A voice command turning on the coffee maker before anyone asked. The porch lights flickering once, just before a storm. Beth had noticed first. "Mom's still here," she'd said with quiet certainty one night. "She just talks in code." Sam had smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Then we'll listen." That evening, as the sun began to set, Beth came running up the steps, her cheeks flushed. "Dad, Miss Sandra, you've got to see this." They followed her out to the hill behind the house. The valley stretched wide and golden, mist curling between the trees. And there, arcing across the entire horizon, was the brightest rainbow they'd ever seen. Vivid, shimmering, impossibly perfect. Beth's hand slipped into Sam's. "Do you think Mom sent it?" He swallowed the lump in his throat and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. I think she did." Sandra leaned her head on his shoulder. "She has good timing." They stood together as the sky blazed in color, the world humming softly with life. For a long moment, everything was still, the kind of stillness that feels like a promise kept. That night, after Beth had fallen asleep, Sam and Sandra sat on the porch, the air cool and full of crickets. Sandra rested her hand on his. "You ever think about what comes next?" He looked at her and smiled. "This. Just more of this." She laughed softly. "Simple man. Complicated past," he said. "Simple dreams." They fell quiet again, watching fireflies blink in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled faintly, gentle, familiar. And then, from the porch light above them, there was a tiny flicker, a single pulse of blue. Sandra glanced up. "Power surge." Sam shook his head, smiling. "No, just her way of saying goodnight." The end.